Hey everyone, welcome back to Unlearn with Bianca. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Hey guys, welcome back. A new week. So a bit of a side tangent, but to kick us off, I just finished the Louis Theroux documentary on Netflix about the manosphere. Wow, that was such an interesting one. I found it so fascinating. I've always been a fangirl of Louis Theroux. If you haven't watched it, I really recommend going to watch because it just highlights so many of the mindsets that are dangerous in today's day and age. I always watch these documentaries or exposés and I get into like a bit of a loop afterwards, a bit of a rabbit hole, and I end up Googling all these different types of people and I Google different laws and all sorts of things. So yeah, anyway, we'll just get on with today's podcast. So today we're talking about the real reason that you are always tired. Let's unpack it together because energy management is something that I have spent a lot of time working on and I'm still mastering. So I want to pass along some things that I've learned. I've learned it the hard way though, that you can do everything right. You can have your 7 hours, 8 hours sleep. You can have your supplements. You can do the movement. You can still wake up tired and you can still be reaching for that third coffee before midday, still questioning, why am I waking up doing all the right things and I'm still feeling completely zapped and I haven't got enough energy to get through the day? The problem isn't always your habits, like the movement, the eating, the sleep. If you've got that down packed, then that's not the problem. It's what's running underneath that. They are what we call energy leaks. So today we're going to be talking about energy leaks. Energy leaks are subtle, they are happening in the background, and that's why most people miss them. They're not always the big things that we think of first. Before we get into it today, though, I want to get your input on something exciting I'm working on. So I'm in the midst of creating a new offering designed to really support you guys, and I want to make sure it includes what is most valuable for you because there's no point in me putting something together and then it not being suited to your needs. And this is really designed for people that want to look after their nervous system and stay mentally fit. So I'm really looking to get feedback on whether you guys would prefer a lifetime access, you'd prefer more of a month-to-month subscription, and what format suits you best, whether I get on and do weekly, fortnightly calls, whether you do your own modules, a mix. I'd love your feedback. So I've actually put a form in the show notes. If you are interested and you're keen, then please go submit that form. It will take 2 minutes, then I can find out what works best for you. Cool, let's get into it. So back into energy management and energy leaks. I'm going to preface this episode by saying one thing that I think is very important to say in this time and space. If you're not feeling energetic at the moment, that is completely valid. I will say that because there is a lot going on in the world right now. We've got rising living costs, we've got economic uncertainty, we've got political uncertainty, and all the other stuff that I don't need to spell out. So there's a lot of pressure that gets filtered down into the collective energy. And yes, these are real external layers that we can feel energetically as we go about our day. Not only the stress of the day-to-day, but you can feel that collective stress and fear, and that has an impact on our nervous systems. So I'm not naive enough to say, oh, we're all just going to have high energy in this season right now. Everyone's got different capacities, and I think that's a really important thing to say. At the same time, there is also so much power in noticing where we are giving our energy away without even realizing from within, because that is where we can actually shift things. That is where we get that sense of influence. And when we have a sense of influence, that in itself gives us energy. The most powerful thing we can all do right now is focus on what we can control. And I truly believe that. I also want to make it really clear that when I'm talking about energy, I'm not talking about chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID. I'm just talking about that low energy, uninspired, blah kind of feeling, right? Chronic fatigue, and people listening that have chronic fatigue or long COVID or have recovered from it, I'm telling you now, that is different. And actually something that my fatigue clients have taught me is that energy is our greatest currency. Because a lot of us don't actually realize how lucky we are to wake up with energy. For people that get that taken away from them, because I've worked with a lot of people that have been bedbound or housebound due to lack of energy and it's not their choice, you really start to realize that your energy is something to be truly grateful for. It is truly one of our greatest currencies to have vibrancy and good energy. I don't take it for granted, trust me. So I mentioned this thing called energy leaks, and that's really the basis of what we're talking about today. I want to give you a picture of what that looks like, right? So imagine that you're pouring all of this water into a bucket. The water is all of the good things that you can do for energy, which is all the good habits. But if there are holes in your bucket, that water is going to go out as fast as it's coming in. Those holes are what we call subtle energy leaks. They are the ones that we're often unaware of that are draining your energy, that is letting the water out of your bucket. So your job really is to find out and get curious about what those holes are, because if you don't understand the holes, then there's going to be this perpetual drain, energy flowing in, energy coming out. And the thing is that often when we think of energy, we do focus on the physical things first. So we focus on our diet, we focus on our sleep. That is great, and that makes total sense. But we can avoid the internal stuff, the internal energy leaks, because those things are a bit more uncomfortable to look at. But these internal energy leaks, these are things that are quietly stealing our energy every single day. So when we patch those up and we start to notice them, like patching up holes in a bucket, that is when your energy starts to naturally come back. That is when you start to feel vitality again. You start to feel like yourself again. And it's completely possible to do this, because I'll say it time and time again, your body is never failing you. And I truly believe that it's always giving you a message, right? It's protecting you. It's also rediverting energy away from vitality if there's not enough resources. Let's get into it. So first energy leak is unfinished business, aka open loops. What does that mean? So basically anything that is left incomplete. And that can be practical things such as the email that you've drafted in your head but you've never actually sent. It can be the task that you keep moving to tomorrow's to-do list, that subscription that you keep forgetting to cancel. Don't do that, by the way, because I just had one sneaky subscription coming out which I didn't realize about, and I had to pay $60. So these sorts of things, if we're like, yep, I'll get to that, that takes mental real estate, that takes energy. It's also unfinished business and open loops emotionally. And this is actually, I would argue, even more of an energy drain. That looks like that conversation with your colleague that you know you need to have deep down, but you keep putting it off because you don't want to face it. Unexpressed emotions over time, they lead to resentment. And when we are in the energy of resentment, that drains our system. It can be saying, I'm fine, when really you're not feeling fine underneath it all. Because when we are saying something and actually feeling another thing, that is resistance, and that drains our energy. So every open loop in this area, it is claiming your attention. How we get out of this is simply to close the loop. So if it's something practical, then you act on it. You schedule it. If it's something emotional, you have the conversation, or you choose to forgive, or you decide to let it go. So it's just taking action and closing the loop. It's so important because a lot of us don't realize how much of our mental energy is going towards thinking about things that are actually unfinished. You will know your capacity around this, because if you're someone like me who has hundreds of unread emails, I know for someone else that would drive them insane. So I can cope with that. That doesn't play on my mind too much, but I have realized now over time that emotional loops that are unfinished, they are what really drain me. So it's learning about what loops we need to close, which have a bigger impact on us individually. The second energy leak that has been so prevalent in my life that I've really had to work on is indecision. Now, I want to say this really clearly. Energy is lost not from making the wrong choice. It is lost from making no choice at all. I'm someone who used to struggle a lot with analysis paralysis, really trying to think about the perfect choice from a decision, the perfect way to go. And I would sit on it for time and time and time and then go back and forth. Yeah, but if I do this, then I'll miss out on this and da-da-da-da. We always know there's an opportunity cost. But sitting on it for that long, it actually would never bring me the clarity that I was desiring, because the perfect answer did not exist. It just cost me with feeling overwhelmed, feeling tired, and putting myself into a freeze response. It even happens in simple things. Should I go to that dinner I got invited to tonight or not? I don't know. I mean, I don't really feel like going, but then I haven't been very social lately, so I probably should go. Sitting on that decision for like an hour, right? Let's say I decide to go. So I have a shower, I get ready, get dressed up, and then last minute I decide, I don't really have the energy to go. Do you know how much of the day becomes wasted and the energy that goes into all of that? That is something that I've really learned over time, is when we can just make a decision, then act from that place, then make a decision again and act from that place. It saves us energy, because decision making in all of these small things throughout our day, with what to eat, with whether we reply to that message, they all add up over time. Every decision you make, whether it's big or small, is processed in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that's responsible for planning, self-control, and it runs on glucose, which is literally like fuel. That means that every decision you have, or every time you sit negotiating with yourself, that costs you something biological. And that leads to what's called decision fatigue. So the more decisions you face in a day, the worse your brain gets at making them. That is why when we get to the second half later in the day, it can feel like it's harder to make decisions. That energy of indecision, negotiating with yourself, that is you spending your cognitive energy without even getting the relief of a resolution, right? So you've constantly got this drain in the background, and you're actually putting your nervous system into a slightly activated stress response. So how do we fix this? How do we patch that hole in our bucket up? Well, take it from someone who's learning, make a decision, roll with it. Any decision, set yourself a time limit, right? I'm going to decide about this in the next 5 minutes and choose. You do not need the best decision right now. You just need to make a decision and move from that place and then make the next decision. That is how momentum works, and that is how we get clarity. I think in today's day and age, we're so scared about doing the wrong thing and what will happen if we don't make the right choice. And it's because we spend a lot of time seeking validation and looking at what everyone else is doing. So the more you can tune and just think, what suits me right now? What suits my family right now? What is the best decision? Let's make a decision, go with it. That is protecting your energy. Another thing that has really helped me is just automating all the small stuff. So having the same breakfast for a few days in a row, keeping the same morning routine. That means that my brain is not using its energy in the morning to have all those micro decisions. And then it's going to have more capacity to make bigger decisions throughout the day. The next thing we want to be aware of that really drains our energy is when we are consuming over creating. That is the drain we feel when we are constantly consuming or taking in things rather than putting out. That is the scrolling, that is the watching, that is the listening to podcasts. You can still listen to mine if you want. Just don't listen to too many. There's the absorbing information. None of it in itself is bad, but when consumption just becomes the default, you stop generating your own thoughts, your own energy, and you stop building your own momentum because you're running on everyone else's output versus your own. And this is something that in the past few weeks I've really tightened up on again in myself. I think it is just so easy for us to take in so much of everyone else's stuff, especially on social media. And I notice when I do that too much, it just completely drains my battery. What that can look like at a practical level is picking up your phone first thing in the morning and immediately entering someone else's world before you've even established your own connection or peace. It wouldn't be unusual if someone said to me that they listened to a podcast on the way to work, they had a scroll at lunchtime, and then they binged a Netflix series at night. That is morning to night input with no space to process or no space to produce, meaning to journal or to be with your own thoughts. That is constant consumption, and that is draining. And we've all felt that before. Because the thing that a lot of people don't talk about enough is when you're in this deep consumption spiral, you actually start absorbing I would call it the emotional weather of everyone around you. So if you see a post about someone's anxiety or someone's outrage or someone's grief, if you're not in a good place and you're feeling a bit sensitive, without realizing it, then you can carry it. And you may not actually consciously notice why you feel a little heavy or a little off. You're not even sure why. That's because those feelings might not even be yours. That energy might not even be yours. That is what happens, especially when we're going through collective things. I mean, we only need to look at what was going on and the fear that was going around during COVID to know that this is what happens, right? So consumption is passive and creation is generative. When you create something, even if it's small, you are building your energy and not spending it. There is a reason why you feel so alive after writing, after talking to someone, after making something, after baking, after saying something that matters to you. That is your brain in its natural state of output. We are living in the most overstimulated era in human history. We all know this. And the algorithm is designed to keep us consuming. So if you are feeling low energy, tighten up on this. And for those of you who think that if you keep consuming more and more information, then you'll get the answer you're looking for, I'm telling you now from personal experience, that is not right. It's about giving yourself a bit of peace, a bit of quiet, a bit of time so that the answers come to you. Because information does not equal integration. And I really mean that. Like I said, listen to this podcast. But if you're not having a good week, maybe the best thing to do is to not listen to anything, Do what suits you week to week and make sure you find some time. Actually, to round out this point, I want to share with you guys an app that has really helped me with this that I came across about a month ago. I may be a bit late to the party, but the app is called Opal. And what it does is it actually blocks your social media apps. Well, any apps I think you can block. But you choose times, working hours, weekends, whatever you want, and it will physically block you from accessing the apps. And it has been crazy to me the amount of time I have just reached for my phone automatically, that neural pathways firing, not even realizing that, not even having anything specifically that I wanted to jump on Instagram for. That just shows how much we are addicted to our phones and that habit of consumption. So download Opal. It has really been such a game changer for me, and it's something that I'm definitely going to be continuing to use. What are we up to? Energy drain number 4, masking your authentic self. There is an energy cost when you're performing a version of you that's not even real, when you're constantly having this facade that you're showing the world, but behind the scenes you feel completely differently. And if I could hone in on any energy drain, this would be it. Because there is the real you, and then there is the one that you're presenting. That gap between can be exhausting over time. How that looks at a practical level, where it actually shows up, it's shrinking your opinion, let's say in a work meeting, because you don't want to seem too much. It's saying yes to plans that you don't actually want to go to. It's saying yes to relationships that actually aren't aligned. It's laughing at something that you don't find funny because everyone else around you is laughing, right? It's dressing in a certain way and speaking in a certain way because that's what everyone else is doing. That is the curated version of you, rather than expressing who you truly are. And this is one that I really realized was draining my energy. It's staying in a version of yourself that made sense 5 years ago. Let's say it's the version that everyone around you knew. It's the one that everyone was comfortable for. You're staying in that identity, just being that person, because changing that feels like too much to explain. It just feels too hard basket. Holding yourself in that old identity and not giving yourself permission to evolve. This is one of the biggest energy drainers, and guys, I still work through it. allowing yourself to evolve as time goes. I don't know why we expect ourselves to be the same version, the same person with the same beliefs that we are at 20 and then in our 40s. It just doesn't work like that. We evolve, we pick up new beliefs, we let go of things, and we have to allow ourselves to do that. And it can be really hard because people around you may not grow at the same rate. And they will be threatened by that growth because people essentially find comfort in you being who they know you to be, right? But it's really important that we allow ourselves to evolve. An example of this for me that you guys might recognize, for a long time, I was purely dedicated and just doing chronic illness recovery for work because that was attached to that version of me, that identity of me that worked at that time. Since then, I have grown exponentially and I am continuing to evolve. So I'm now opening up and having different conversations around different things that also inspire me, that I'm interested in. So it's just creating that space to stay curious about who we are in this next evolution. Every time you go against who you really are, there's this inner resistance that you can feel. Things get harder, things get slower, things feel heavier. And you know what? You know how I see it? It's not because life is punishing you. It's because you're swimming against your own current. Everything starts to slow down. Opportunities start to slow down. Money starts to slow down. Friendships start to slow down. Relationship problems pop up. That happens when you're swimming against your own current. Also, we feel energized by aligned people with the same passions, people that get us, people that see the real us. But there's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation going on, because how can you find those people if you're not being authentic to yourself? To find the right people, to find the right opportunities in your life, you have to be the most authentic version of yourself, not by putting on a performance, not by wearing a mask. That is draining because you wonder why nothing quite fits. So we can all start small on this, and simply by sharing an honest opinion, giving a real answer instead of a polished one, wearing what you want to wear, wearing the dress, even if people were like, oh, why is she wearing that? Why is she so overdressed? Wear the dress, wear the thing that makes you feel good. Making a decision from the gut rather than from a spreadsheet. All these tiny things. When you do one of these, I promise you will notice your energy. You will notice maybe a little bit of hesitancy at the start, but after that you will feel energized, because that is you reconnecting with the real you. That is you putting out your authentic signal. Number 5 of the energy drainers is the misuse of your imagination. Do you know what? You are always using your imagination. You are either imagining the best case scenario in the future, or you're using your imagination to imagine worst case scenario, which is essentially worry and anxiety. A lot of us have this misconception that if I worry about something in the future, if I analyze every single scenario, that will help me prepare, that will help me problem solve if the thing comes up. But that is draining your energy. Your imagination is being pointed in the wrong direction. I said on an Instagram reel last week, I think it was, that the hardest things I've ever been through, I never saw coming. The hardest things I have been through, I never saw coming. And interestingly, the things that I worried about so much and would put all that mental energy into, often they wouldn't come true. Which is a really important point I want to get across, because the things that were really hard in my life that I never saw coming, I got through anyway. I didn't have a choice but to get through them. When they came, I navigated through it in that moment. And that just shows how much energy we put into these fake scenarios, the what ifs, rather than what could go right. And that is just so much mental drain. I've caught myself recently worrying about different things as well. But the difference is, when I notice that it's just running away, that thought loop is just there for 10, 20 minutes, I recognize it and I put a stop to it. Because yes, we're human. The energy drain comes from catastrophizing for long periods of time, like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, in that same loop, when you can't actually do anything practical in that moment about the situation. That is what drains our energy. When we're in the state of worry and catastrophizing, our brain doesn't actually distinguish between something that's an imagined threat or a real threat. The amygdala, which is the brain's threat detector, it actually fires the same way as if there's danger right in front of you or danger in the room, rather than just in your head. That is where we activate that stress response. Our body, if it's in that stress response for a long period of time, it is not going to prioritize vitality. It is the last thing that we would need if we were running from a tiger, right? This is why anxiety and fatigue often go hand in hand. So when you catch yourself in a worry spiral, I want you to interrupt it with one question. Is this real right now? Or am I imagining a potential threat? If it's imagined, then redirect it. What else could be true? What would be best case scenario? Then you're giving the same energy to that scenario that you were giving to worst case. This is what I teach my clients to do in the lightning process. So if you really need help with this, then I'm more than happy to support you and work through the different thought loops that you're getting stuck in. One more thing that I quickly want to mention to you guys, it really helps me if I'm worrying about something, is I put pen to paper and I make a plan. I write down exactly what action steps I can take to mitigate something, a situation, and that helps me close the loop. So when I actually know I can take some action, if there's small things I can do, then that helps release that energy, close the loop, and I find that I'm not getting into worst case scenario as much. Energy leak number 6. It's when you are negotiating with people who misunderstand your worth. This is exhausting. This endless loop of trying to make someone understand your value, understand your perspective. That is when you over-explain yourself. That is when you're justifying your decisions. That is when you're saying sorry more than you need to, defending your choices to people that actually were never really listening to begin with. You're not having a conversation in these instances. You're auditioning and you're performing. Other examples might be staying in that dynamic longer than you should because you're trying to prove something to someone who fundamentally does not see you. You're not seeing the truth of the situation. You're trying to prove yourself. They're never going to see you. You could be over-explaining a decision you made. You could be sending the long message. This might be in friendships or relationships, breaking down your reasoning and then feeling worse after, not better, because you've got yourself into a bigger spiral. So every time you over-explain, you are sending a message to yourself that your worth is something that needs to be argued for. If you just find the right words, the right angle, the right tone, then they'll finally get it. That is constantly grasping for someone outside of you to understand you. It's constant negotiation, and that in itself is draining. People either see you and they hear you, or they don't. And spending your energy trying to convince other people to hear you is a leak. I will say that one again because I spent years trying to prove points or argue points or, not get why someone wouldn't get my point of view. It is draining your energy. You don't need to do that. Save your energy. Trust me, it's a really important one to learn. The hardest pill to swallow, but also something that brings complete freedom, is that not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone is meant to get you. And some relationships, they're just not your assignment. We can outgrow people. It's hard. It's not easy, but it is what is meant to happen in life. And the sooner you stop trying to manipulate and change a version of you to work for somebody else, the sooner you get your energy back. And the last point I want to talk on today around energy leaks, I don't know what I want to call this one. I think it's not doing enough of what makes you feel good. That is an energy leak. I read this quote, I don't know who quoted it, but it goes something like, you're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you're not doing enough of what lights you up. And something that is so important to remember In times, especially when it feels heavy, when it's difficult, we have to actively protect our joy. You have to actively protect your joy and go out of your way to actively do things that make you feel good, even if they feel a little bit inconsequential. Is that the right word? Even if it feels like there's bigger and more important things to do. I personally have an energy list, an energy giver list, which I encourage you guys to do. And I change this every few months. I just take a bit of time to sit down and really think about what brings me energy on a mental, physical, and emotional level, because everybody's list is going to look a little bit different. For one person, something that gives them energy might deplete someone else. The reason why I do this list is because when I go to do something enjoyable, I don't have to brainstorm in that moment, because that actually takes more energy when you feel like you haven't got the energy to brainstorm, right? So my energy giving list, I haven't got it in front of me, but I'll give you guys some examples. It would have things like getting coffee and going for a walk with a friend, putting on old school R&B, absolutely is going to turn up my energy, wearing color, putting on a dress, creating content on the spot without planning and overthinking it, just pulling my camera up, warm locations, tropical locations, eating dessert sometimes gives me energy. These sorts of things, you get the point. But the beauty of this is that if I'm really having an off day and I'm not feeling myself, I can go to my list and pick something off it that would give me that instant energy boost, rather than having to brainstorm in that moment. What I've also learned is really important is to go about getting your energy needs met directly, rather than a subconscious, indirect way, which a lot of people do. For example, an indirect way of getting a need for rest would be overworking all week just to earn a weekend break. That is an indirect way, or a very counterproductive way of getting your rest. A more direct way of meeting your requirement for rest would be taking a quick walk when your body needs it, taking a 20-minute rest at night when your body needs it. So it's really important, again, that we can go directly to our list and think, what do I need in this moment? It can also be really beneficial every few months to write down all the small things that you know are robbing your energy and draining your energy, and then think about some solutions for these things. For example, mine would be waking up scattered and not meditating. So a solution would be to fit in a short meditation. A draining thing for me is drinking alcohol, too much alcohol. I know that currently, eating too much sugary food, not using Opal, which is that app blocking app. An energy drain for me is undercharging. It's when I become resentful, it's overcommitting to things. These are all energy drains. So if I can get honest with myself, if I can list them down, then I have a better chance at being able to patch these sneaky things up. If I don't take time to patch them up and look at them, you can almost liken it to having apps running on a phone. You're not using them, you're not looking at them, but in the background, they're draining the battery of your phone. And before you know it, you run out of battery. So it's the same thing with all these really little things that we have running in the background in life. And finally, to really go back to what I said, do more of the things you love. It's so important. I've said this before on other podcasts, that we include things in life that we want to do with no outcome, with no end goal, with no destination in mind. Because when we engage in doing these things for the love of it and for the act itself, we are fed energy at the same time we're expending energy. You can feel the energy that comes from having a really great conversation with someone stimulating or a friend that you love. You feel your energy increase. These are not things that have an outcome. These are not serious things. These are not day-to-day things. These are just things that we love. I get so much energy just by going down to the beach, and I don't do it enough, but being somewhere where you realize how small you are, how insignificant you are, and just taking that bigger perspective, that gives me a lot of energy. So making sure we do things that don't have an end goal. So there we go, guys. They are the energy drains that we want to become aware of. Remembering that if you just notice one or two of them that I've talked about today, the ones that really apply to you, you start to become aware, you start to patch them up. Energy management, your energy will naturally make its way back. I believe that we all have access to an abundance of energy and vitality when we practice energy management well. Don't underestimate all these little things that could just be running in the background and how quickly your energy will come back when you just start to work on the small things. I hope that today's episode has given you something to think about. And as always, I love to hear your feedback. So if there's something that really stood out today, please message me on Instagram, send me an email. You're welcome to share with me what resonated, what didn't resonate. I always love hearing from you guys. I hope you have a great week ahead, and I'll see you guys next week.